This map that's on the screen right now is a map of the redrawn boundaries that exist for a couple of different things. Now, because the high school in North Central wasn't built in a timely fashion, it was literally over capacity when it opened. And because it's been over capacity for the 2 years now that it's been open, they've had to put caps on how many kids can go to that school. Now, how do you manage a cap? There's a couple of different ways. One of them is to say you have to live within this big area in order to be able to go to this school, period. The other is to say, if you live within this big area, we're going to have a lottery in order to decide who gets to go to this school and who gets punted to the next nearest school. And we'll get to that in just a sec. There will be, however, priority for people who can walk. If you're within walking distance of the school, then we're going to give you priority in that lottery. Now, this is where it gets kind of bonkers, because prior to 2023, all school boards, except for the Calgary Board of Education, used either driving distance from home to school or as the crow flies to calculate transportation distances as to whether or not the student got transportation paid for. So if you lived outside of a certain distance, then you would get a free bus pass or a discounted bus pass, or you get to ride on a bus. The CBE, up until 2023, used walking distances that included engineered pathways rather than driving distances. Because in most new communities, it's not the chock-a-block city blocks. There are a lot of different pathways that are built in to make it easier for people to walk around and get around the community. In March of 2023, the UCP changed the rules for eligibility for transportation. So under the old rules, students had to live at least 2.4 kilometers from their designated school to access busing or to get a bus pass. The UCP changed the distance they lowered it to 1 kilometer for students in grade 1 to 6 and 2 kilometers for grades 7 to 12, beginning in September of 2024. They also mandated that the distances for those measurements had to be measured by roadways, not pathways, because not all areas, particularly older ones, have designated pathways. So from the start, it almost sounds like the UCP was trying to do maybe a good thing. They were trying to give more kids access to being able to get bus passes, to have the transit. But as always, there's also an and. So there are rumors that the UCP believed that the CBE was using the pathway calculation so that they could generate a $7 million surplus for general transportation in order to cover a $7 million deficit in specialized transportation. Specialized transportation is for kids who are navigating disabilities. According to those same rules, LaGrange changed the rules to prevent the CBE from overcharging general busing students for the benefit of specialized busing students. So there's some questions that need to be asked in regards to motive. Now, even if you did believe that the CBE was moving money away or moving money around to get more funding for disabled students to have access to transportation, they were moving funding around to get disabled students access to transportation, which isn't a bad thing. Let's be clear about that. Even if that rumor is true, it's still not a bad thing, because making sure that disabled kids have access to transportation so they can get to school, that's actually a good thing. And if they had to do some accounting chicanery in order to make that happen, I personally can live with that. But all of that aside, for reasons that appear to defy reasoning, the CBE has decided to use the same criteria for roadways and ignore all pathways and giant open school fields when calculating who can walk to their school. So, by way of example, here's a picture of the high school. Now, a couple of things that are important to keep in mind. The big roads that you see on your left there, those are the biggest main drags that come in and out of this section of North Central Calgary. There are only 2 lanes. So clogging up those arteries with a boatload of cars is probably not the best strategy. Directly behind the school on the right side of the screen, you can see 2 fields. One of them is a field that's for the high school. The other one is a field that's for the junior high school that's directly beside it. Now, let me show you how dumb this whole situation is. Because if you're a kid who lives on this street right here, this is where you live, on this street. You can see all of those houses back out onto the high school. So it's not unreasonable to suggest that for a kid who lives on that street where all of the houses back out onto the high school, their walk to school might be like 50 meters, if that, because again, they're right there. There's the houses, there's the school, it's all right there. But if we use the criteria that the UCP have mandated and that the CBE is using to measure who gets to be within the walking distance map for this school, that student isn't allowed to walk through their backyard to get right to school. They have to walk 1.6 kilometers, crossing 5 different roadways in order to enter the school. Now, what I love about this map so much is that the front door is actually on the other side of the school. So they've made the distance a little bit farther than it has to be, but it also underscores the point that the kid could just walk through their backyard to the school. So this isn't just the North Central High School. This is for all of the schools in Calgary. So Calgary, can we meet me over here in camera one? I'm already at camera one. There's a lot to unpack here, but it's not just North Central. This is the entirety of Calgary that's going to be affected by these policy changes. And in case you thought it couldn't possibly get dumber, wait, it does. Because if we go to another map, and again, if we're looking here, we've got this kid. Let's say this kid lives on this street that's just on the other side of that other junior high school. For them to walk across the two fields to get to the high school is 400 meters. How dumb is this? Let's go to a different map. Let's go to the actual map. Again, this is the actual map. There's an arrow that shows the distance between if a kid lives on that street and a kid lives and he's walking to the school, the 400 meters. Now that kid falls outside of the walking distance map. The walking distance is the darker color one. That kid falls outside of that distance. Which kid doesn't? That one. Only by nature of the fact that the kid who's coming from the very, very bottom doesn't have access to any pathways and is just going to be going straight up the main drag there. And the kid who does have access to the pathways, that is only 400 meters, not even pathways, just big fields that are not going to be developed because they're sports fields for the schools, has to go 400 meters. That kid is considered to be farther away than the kid at the bottom of the map. And where does it get really, really nuts? Well, in order to get a sense of where the next school is, we have to zoom way out. Because if you're a kid who doesn't win the literal lottery and get to go to that school that is already over capacity, you're literally going halfway across the city to the next high school. If you squint at this map and maybe like lean really, really close to your screen, we did leave the little arrow in there. It's just unbelievably hard to see because that's how far kids are going to have to go if they don't win the lottery in order to go to these schools.